Welcome back to the King's Corner, the place for all things Bethesda. I am the KingFanMan. And hey, if you love Bethesda, Fallout, The Elder Scrolls, and even Starfield, and you're not subscribed yet to the KingFanMan channel, why not? That's all I talk about here, so go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Let's jump right to what Jez Gordon said this week on The Elder Scrolls 6 and the Fallout 3 remasters, because I'm sure all of our minds are on it anyway. So this is what Jez Gordon said. Now, I'm going to directly quote him here, okay? Y'all are not going to like what he had to say, by the way. He said, "Now, I don't know how true this is." That's how he prefaced it. But he said the Fallout remasters are probably a little farther off than most people are thinking. And then he finally said 2027 for the Fallout remasters, or at least one of them, he said. And then he said, and the Elder Scrolls 6 is still quite a far way away, either the year after that, which would be 2028, or the year after that, which is 2029. Now, I love Jez. He does great stuff, and he is much more of an insider than I am, okay? So, y'all listen to what I say with a grain of salt. Even listen to what he says with a grain of salt. But I'm going to lay it out why I believe what he's saying about the Elder Scrolls is not true. Now, as far as Fallout 3 Remastered, I believe he's right on target. A lot of people are thinking that maybe Fallout 3 is coming this summer because of that McFarlane toy leak. Of course, as we know, it is dated in August. But I've been saying all along that Bethesda would be dumb if they did not hold Fallout 3. Even if it was done, they need to hold it until Season 3 of the TV show. I just think that would be, I'm not in marketing, but if I was in marketing, that's what I would recommend, is releasing it around the Season 3 of the TV show. So that's what I think they're going to do with the Fallout 3 Remastered. It just makes perfect sense. You look at Season 3, what they've already teased. The Enclave is going to be a much major part of Season 3 in the Fallout TV show. So you will probably have Washington, D.C. flashbacks. You know how they do the flashbacks in the TV show? That just makes perfect sense. But now let's talk about what he said about the Elder Scrolls 6. He said the Elder Scrolls 6 is still quite a far way away, and he thinks either 2028 or 2029. And let me just lay out why I don't think that's even possible. Let's go back to the creation of Starfield. How long did it take them to make Starfield once they were on full development of Starfield? We know, of course, that Fallout 76 came out in 2018. We also know that Maryland had obviously a lot of help from Bethesda in Austin, but Maryland backed off of saying how involved they were with Fallout 76. Trust me, at least the last 2 years, Bethesda, Maryland was constantly on Fallout 76, okay? So Starfield didn't go into full production until 2018. So with that, it took 5 years to make Starfield, okay? Not counting the pre-production and all that. What do we know about Starfield's development? Number one, it had a very troubled engine upgrade. The Creation engine to the Creation 2 engine, Todd Howard has been on record saying it was a very tough upgrade. Very tough upgrade. In fact, in one interview, he actually said they had to go back, delete things, and start over. It was very tough. There were times during that engine upgrade, by the way, they were doing it all in-house, so the same developers that were working on the game was trying to upgrade the engine as well. They had to totally stop on the production of the game to do the engine upgrade. Okay, so it was a very troubled engine upgrade. We already know by Todd Howard's own words that the Creation 2 to Creation 3 upgrade was much, much smoother.
The change to Creation Engine 2 from where we were for Starfield was such an, upheaval for what we were doing. We felt coming out of that we could have managed that better. So going into Creation Engine 3, I can't say enough about our tech staff and how they've handled that transition so that we can still be making a game while that is going on.
In fact, he said with IGN and then Mortismal Gaming, both of those interviews, he talked about how they did not even have to slow down development on the Elder Scrolls 6 when they upgraded to the Creation 3 engine. Didn't even have to slow down. On Starfield, they had to go back and delete things, okay? Much, much different. Also, Starfield is a new IP. I don't think you realize how much more work goes into a new IP than an existing IP.
And, as we come back to Elder Scrolls 6 that we're doing now, we're coming back to that kind of classic style that we've missed, that we know really, really well.
In a new IP, you literally have to think up everything. Todd keeps talking about how much time they spent on figuring out what they ate and what toys the kids played with and designing all these things. So anytime you have a new IP, it's going to take longer. It's going to take more resources. And then finally, we seem to forget during the development of Starfield, there was a worldwide pandemic that literally closed down their studio. And on the FTC documents, what do we all say? There is a 2-year gap on the FTC documents. What caused that 2-year gap, I wonder? It was the worldwide pandemic that literally delayed things for 2 years.
But if I look back over the development, which was very long for Starfield, new IP, company change, pandemic, how do we work together? All of those things made for, a more difficult development than we anticipated.
So even with all of that, it took 5 years from 2018 to 2023 to get Starfield out, okay? So now let's look ahead to the Elder Scrolls. What do we know about the Elder Scrolls? Again, we know the engine went much easier. Much easier. They didn't even have to slow down development. Again, it's not a new IP, so all the lore is established. Todd Howard said in 2022 that they had known what the beginning of the game was for Elder Scrolls 6 for years. And in fact, in 2022, he said they already had like the first 3 hours done. That was still pre-development, okay? And then finally, of course, there was no worldwide pandemic. So, how long would it take? Even if it took the same amount as it did with Starfield, which is crazy because of those 3 things that I just gave you. If it took the same amount of time that it took with a worldwide pandemic, a bad engine upgrade, and a new IP, it would only be, 2028. I'm going to go out on a limb and give you a KingFanMan guarantee. I guarantee you it will not be later than 2028. There is no way. And with all that said, I truly believe it's coming in 2027. If you listen to Todd's own words, Todd tells you how long it takes them to develop a game.
Where we're sort of at maximum size. We just call that production. That's like the full production period. And that, depending on the game, can run a year, 2 years, maybe more. And then you kind of have a final 6 months to a year on a game, which is, okay, we've built everything now. And usually it needs a lot of glue, where we have a lot of very different elements that maybe aren't clicking together the way you want, outside of the regular polish for levels and features. And we're shaving and gluing and sticking things together so that it's not this schizophrenic game experience that things flow from one into another.
So even if you take the longest amount of time that he said on both of those, that's 2027 by Todd's own words. Now, do I see a possibility of them delaying it for polish, something like they did with Starfield. By the way, that 5-year Starfield thing was delayed again by Phil Spencer for polish, so they were done before then. Could I see them doing something like that to 2028? Yes. 2028, though, is the furthest away I could ever see the Elder Scrolls being. I still believe it's going to be here in 2027. I hear people say this, and I respect your opinion, and I understand. And we are about 3 years from Elder Scrolls 6. I would love to hear why. See, I hear everybody say that. Please tell me why and how it's possible. Why does it take Starfield less time during a worldwide pandemic, a troublesome engine upgrade, and it being a new IP? Why would it take more time for the Elder Scrolls 6 than it did for Starfield? A brand new thing. By the way, they had to do brand new systems. Not only the shipbuilding and all that, but think about ship flight and everything that Bethesda had never even come close to doing. They're at least going back to something they know very, very, very well. Now, obviously, there's probably going to be some new mechanic like ships or castles or something. Who knows what Todd's going to throw at us. But still, the core of the game is something that they know very, very well. But 5 years was the most that it had ever taken for a BGS game. And again, that was because of the worldwide pandemic and that terrible engine upgrade. There is no way it can take longer unless we learn something. Again, I would just love to hear why people are saying 2028, 2029, 2030. I know it feels like we've been waiting forever. I know it feels like Bethesda games are taking forever, but it's really not true. It took 5 years for Starfield during a worldwide pandemic. This was a segment from this week's KingCast, the live podcast covering the latest Bethesda news. It is every Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Central. Before you go, be sure and like this video and make a comment. Both of those things help this video get out to more people. And consider hyping the video as well. That really helps. And if you would like to support me in this channel, you can become a member of the King's Crew, or you can go check out my Patreon. The link is down in the description. I am the KingFanMan. I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.